Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018. We are back live on the air. April Fools, everybody. It's April 1st and not April. All right, it is April 3rd. We missed April Fool's Day. They put that one on a Sunday. It was also Easter. How'd that go for you? Pretty good? Did you watch Jesus Christ Superstar on television? I tried to watch it, and I couldn't understand any of the words to it. But I already knew most of the story. Although, quite honestly, not enough, I don't know what, maybe old-time online people to recognize. I thought I had a nice joke at the end there, or watched the very end of Jesus Christ Superstar, and they took a commercial break right before the curtain calls, and of course, the crucifixion scene had just taken place, and I just used their hashtag, that Jesus Christ Superstar Live, and said, BRB, and tweeted that one out there, and I don't know, maybe people don't remember that as online. Was that old-time online lingo where people just didn't think, I don't know, maybe nobody thought that was appropriate to be tweeting, be right back? Okay, but they were going to be right back from commercial break is all I meant. I didn't mean anything offensive by it. Anyway, looks like that was a big hit, although I did see a couple of people criticizing the audio mix, for one thing. I couldn't understand anything, but okay, it was a live performance. Exciting, great programming choice, I thought, a lot of fun, and I guess Bill O'Reilly was upset because, people of color were on television in roles that clearly belong to white people, because Jesus. And, we can't even come together over the story of Jesus' crucifixion on Easter. Well, not everybody is Christian. So I guess that's to be expected at some point. Big news all over the place. I don't know any of it. Greg Dworkin's not here to tell us what it is. That's tomorrow. It'll be Greg Dworkin and Joan McCarter filling us in on the news. Might as well throw the door open at this point for Armando, because big legal doings in the Mueller proceedings, particularly against Paul Manafort, which, as I understand, the quick and dirty on this, Paul Manafort at some point, like, any defendant with a lawyer with lots of money to play with will do, attempted to, and really, even if you don't have money, you would attempt to have the charges against you thrown out on some technical grounds, wouldn't you? Most people would. Good luck to if you have a public defender, but if you have a conscientious one, they'll try it. The idea being that Manafort's claims were that the mandate handed to Mueller by the Rosenstein, I can't remember. We settled whether he's Rosenstein or Rosenstein. I think he's Rosenstein, because I would have read it Rosenstein, and so therefore it's the other one. But arguing that the memo that established, or he maybe didn't know about the memo per se, but the establishment of his mandate for the investigation, Mueller's or Manafort's lawyers believed, but hoped was also the case, was that put the investigation of Manafort and his doings outside of the purview, the bailiwick, if you will, of what Mueller was supposed to be investigating, which is kind of it's a good try, ordinarily, but the big news is that there was a response from Mueller, which is direct and deadly, to the point. Here is a memo, essentially. It was highly redacted, and that made it all the more intriguing. But a memo that was straight to the point. Hi, this is Rod Rosenstein. How you doing, Bob? Here's your mandate. And it includes directly having a look at Paul Manafort, including allegations that one was helping the Trump campaign collude with Russia to interfere in the 2016 election, and two, the stuff you actually eventually got indicted on, that you were money laundering and screwing around with Ukrainian politicians, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it's like I said, it's deadly to their motion, because the motion was, you don't have the authority, and here was a memo from the Department of Justice saying, here's your authority, and it includes this thing. So that'll finish the motion, but that's not the big news. Armando says he's free to discuss it. We'll welcome him to do that at any point, and he'll take you through the particulars. But the big news is, one, his motion will die an ignominious death, as it, I think everybody expected it would, but not necessarily in such dramatic fashion, direct and to the point. Also, the redaction of this memo is interesting. Lots of people are speculating on it, trying to decide whether it was redacted because of classified material that was included in it, or whether it was merely redacted for tactical prosecutorial purposes. That is, the rest of this information, though necessary for a judge to make a ruling on the motion, would be damaging or prejudicial to the investigation of other individuals for other related issues, and we don't want to tip our hand on those things. And almost whichever one it is, I think, seems extraordinarily dangerous for Trump. I mean, quite honestly, he should be sweating bullets. Is basically it. Do we want to do it right now? If you're available to do it right now, Armando, we'll go ahead and have that discussion, and I can use part of that time to pretend I'm organizing the rest of the show. There's plenty to go over, of course, not just details over the broadcast of Jesus Christ Superstar, but much, much more. And things were a little hairy this morning. Getting the kids back to school after spring break or any extended break always is a little bit problematic, and it results in problems in getting the show started. So we got to find a way to cram an extra 15 seconds into the front of the show at some point. I forgot to roll back the interlude and get things back on target. Anyway, much more important than any of that, as I mentioned, is the news from the Mueller front. Armando is here to help talk us through it. Good morning, Armando. How you doing?
Hey, good morning, David. Good morning. Have a nice day off yesterday?
Yes, it was nice. I wanted to make sure there was a show there for everybody. And just taking the gamble that Pruitt hadn't been fired yet, I figured Easter Monday they were going to keep Trump pretty busy. And they did. They put him out at the Easter egg roll where he told the toddlers about funding the military.
With the big rabbit beside him.
Yes. And somebody had the great comment of, it was Kevin Cruz maybe, was saying that, is it Cruz or Krause? I'm trying to remember his last name, but saying a new hero, the cameraman at CBS who kept the rabbit, the Easter Bunny, in frame during Trump's rambling national security / economy remarks to the under 5 set. The guy has no sense of what's appropriate. It takes you back to, hey, Boy Scout Jamboree, you want to hear about my Playboy millionaire friends and his yacht in the south of France? I shouldn't tell you. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you.
Look.
This guy had the biggest... What? Who? Boy Scouts? What an idiot.
It's unbelievable. I mean, all the other things he is just a complete idiot.
He's got nothing. All right.
And look, we've gone over it. He was a terrible businessman. He bankrupted every company he did until he finally found out how to cash in on his name recognition, and the rest is infamous history. But before that, he was the worst businessman in the history of business.
Yeah, pretty much. He's gone backwards for years and lost money in the casino business. Lost other people's money in the casino business, and I guess that's the important part.
Well, he lost. Let's be clear. He lost money. He lost his money in the casino business too. I mean, he owned casinos, and then he lost them because they lost money.
That's true. He lost the sole ownership of them to partnership ownership, and then he lost his partner's money on top of that.
I actually heard a funny story about somebody who went to a talk with Mark Lazary, who is actually a big Democrat, but he's a big hedge fund guy. And he had loaned Trump money in the casino business. And Trump came in blustering to him. And Lazary said, "You're useless. I don't need you. I don't need you. Boom, get out. I'm taking over the company. And that's what he did.
Okay.
But
That's what I would do. Can
finally,
you do that
someone
now?
did it because there was no upside to dealing with him. Of course, he wasn't president of the United States then, so he had no power.
Right.
He was just the blustery celebrity apprentice idiot. Which, by the way, the Apprentice show was going on, and he was being trumpeted as a big business mogul while he was losing his casinos at the same time.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how early that started, but yeah, I mean, we've been over it.
He lost it in the second half of the 2000s is when he started. He had to sell 50%. They lost the other 50%. All that during, and he said, I got out of Atlantic City ahead of everybody. No, you got run out of Atlantic City.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he was awful at it, and of course, we've read so much already about how the premise of The Apprentice was most people have no idea. So, they had taken his caricature from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous days when he first got famous and just said, all right, most people, if they know him at all, they know him as this guy. And he's a glitz and glamour guy, and he'll say anything. So we'll just build a show around the idea that he's a super sharp with it businessman who can cut through, BS and red tape and just make him look like that. And it was hard work. The editors really had to struggle. And I suppose it would be worth going back and watching the episodes. I mean, for me, it would be going.
Yeah,
period.
I never watched the show.
And knowing what we know about him now and how they edited the show, apparently people who watch the show will tell you that if you look back at it, all his firing decisions, and that was his role in the show. Someone would make up a challenge, I guess, and then write it down on cue cards, and he would read it. Then they would go do the thing, and then he'd have to assess the results and fire somebody. And very frequently they were at a complete loss in the editing booth. Why did he fire that person? The results were totally upside down from what he said they were. And he fired the person who either did the best or didn't make a mistake, but maybe didn't do the worst. But he'd fire the wrong person, but they'd have to go back on B-roll and look for reasons to justify the firing that he made, and they try to construct a show that way. But that's not what we came here to discuss.
And we're talking about a stupid show. I mean, unbelievable. Anyway, I was supposed to go on to tell you about the Mueller thing.
Yes, there was that.
I thought it was a huge story, and it's getting play, but I think it's bigger than what people are saying. I actually do think this is real hard evidence that Mueller is going after Trump, and that he will get fired, and Rosenstein will get fired, and we'll have a constitutional crisis.
Yes.
Huh?
I said a lot of people are saying that. I began to say that and realized what I'm saying here. But
well, I mean, I've always thought, maybe it's just go right to the edge, but not go after Trump directly because,
that's the way things
maybe
usually
he'll feel he can neuter him or something. I don't know. But I don't think so anymore. If first to set the scene, why is Mueller filing this memo written by Rod Rosenstein, the number 2 man at the Department of Justice? If you don't know who Rod Rosenstein is at this late date, I would hope you would, but if you didn't, I just told you. And because Jeff Sessions is recused from the Russia investigation, Rod Rosenstein is the top Justice Department official overseeing that investigation. By the way, I think there's a certain impropriety in that, in my view, given the firing of Comey. He was involved and he's a witness. So, but at this point, it behooves us to overlook that because Rosenstein seems to be supporting Mueller fully. At any rate, after Mueller's named, after Comey's fired, we're coming up in a month on the 1 year anniversary of that. How do we commemorate that day? But one of the indictments, or 2 indictments actually, he's got one in District of Columbia and one in the Eastern District of Virginia. Paul Manafort. Paul Manafort, of course, the former campaign chairman for Donald Trump.
Right.
Rick Gates has already pled guilty and is clearly a cooperating witness. And for some context, it's important to keep in mind a couple of stories that came out last week that the cooperation they're looking for from Gates is not on the tax stuff or the foreign registration stuff with Manafort. Mueller feels they've got him cold, and if you've looked at the indictment and the documents that are described and the emails that are described, it seems pretty clear they do. Remember, what was it? He spent X amount of dollars on suits and stuff. I mean, they really got him cold. So they don't need Gates for that. And they said what they needed Gates for is the Russian interference coordination, conspiracy, cooperation, collusion, the famous collusion word. All right, so given that backdrop, Gates is already apparently cooperating on that point, and reporting is that he met with this Klimachev. They're basically saying outright that he's a Russian agent, and of course he was an associate of theirs. Yes. So they were dealing with him all that time during the campaign. So what happens? Manafort is indicted for these different things involving money laundering, bank fraud, tax evasion, all those things they've got him for.
Good stuff.
And Manafort, first he filed a civil lawsuit in D.C. challenging that Mueller's power to even indict him, saying he couldn't be appointed to do this, he wasn't appointed to do this, etc. That lawsuit got thrown out because, not surprisingly, they said, well, those arguments you make in the criminal case, and you don't need to file a civil case here. But the D.C. case is actually on a different time schedule. It's a little longer winded, even though it came first. And I do know that it's scheduled for trial. I believe the Eastern District of Virginia one is as well. But you may or may not know, David, that the Eastern District of Virginia is famous for its rocket docket.
Yes, I have heard that nickname.
Yeah, and that means they move cases faster than anybody, and that's my understanding. I've never had a case in the Eastern District, but every time I look at their schedules, I say, "Wow, that's how are they going to get that done?" But apparently they do. Anyway, because of the expedited schedule relative to the D.C. case, the time for motions to dismiss the indictment in the Eastern District of Virginia case came earlier. So he made a motion to dismiss the indictment. And he made the similar arguments to what he had made in his civil suit in D.C., which is Mueller wasn't appointed to do these things. He's exceeded his authority. He couldn't be appointed to do these things. The reg says this and the reg says that. At the time when I first read that motion, my first thought was, you got a problem here, Manafort. And it's this, that the scope of Mueller's jurisdiction is determined by, guess who? The Attorney General or his designate, i.e., in this case, Rod Rosenstein. Rod Rosenstein decides if he's exceeded his jurisdiction or not. So I figured, well, they'll just put an affidavit in from Rosenstein, say, no, he hasn't. I gave him authority to do this. And that would be the end of it.
Could have done it that way. I mean,
and I think it's curious, and this is why I think it's an interesting choice that he didn't do it that way. What did he do instead? Instead, he filed what had been a secret memo, secret to us and the public, and obviously not a secret to Rosenstein and Mueller. And indeed, in the motion, the response to the motion, Mueller's rights. And when I say Mueller, I mean, in this case, I believe it is the fellow, I forget his name, Dreeben, I think, who's supposed to be a crackerjack appellate attorney. And he apparently wrote this motion and signed this motion. They write here, instead they submit what is a August 17, 2017 memo. I believe it's August 17, but it was August.
Yeah, August, maybe even August 2nd. But it's, August 2017. That's the key thing. It's a long time ago.
Right. August 2017. in which Rosenstein wrote apparently an extensive memo outlining what Mueller's charge is, what he is supposed to be investigating. And what was interesting, it also, at least the parts that we could see, remember, 90% of it's redacted. There's only a little bit about Manafort just to defeat this motion. And it says, in the Manafort part, just to get to the merits of that motion, you are empowered to investigate his activities with Ukraine and things that arose from it. And here, it's committed a crime or crimes arising out of payments he received from the Ukrainian government before and during the tenure of President Viktor Yanukovych, was the exact words. Now, if you're familiar with the indictments, everything that flows from these indictments is actually related to his Ukrainian. Most of it is related to his Ukrainian stuff. Some is just, miscellaneous stuff like the suits and things like that, where he was engaged in tax evasion. But he was evading taxes from money he got from the Ukraine. So, boom, that's it. So Manafort's motion is dead. Boom, over. Unless the argument is Rosenstein couldn't appoint him for that, which is ridiculous because Rosenstein could appoint him for anything. It's not as if, the court gets to review what the Department of Justice decides is the brief of the special counsel. Understand something. This is not an independent counsel statute. This isn't anything like that. This is the Justice Department saying this guy's going to prosecute this.
Right.
Now, in the Eastern District of Virginia could have been the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia or whatever, but they decided that Mueller should do it. And really, it's almost unreviewable once Rosenstein says that he can do it. And that's exactly what happened. So why then is the question, instead of just saying Rosenstein stated, yeah, I gave him the mandate, and why not just show the one about Ukraine? Why do they show part 2 of the bullet point? There's a bullet point in there, which is what everyone's talking about, which is the mandate to investigate collusion with the Russian interference in the 2016 election.
Right.
Manafort, specifically.
Yes. And
why is that included here? The indictment isn't for the Russia investigation,
right,
per se, interference. It's about the Ukrainian money and the money laundering and the tax evasion and the failure to register. What is Mueller doing by revealing something, frankly, he did not have to do?
I am not sure. I mean, I have
my
guesses,
theory is he's signaling to everybody in the world, I'm going after Russian collusion and the Trump campaign, and I've got the goods.
I guess so. I mean, there's really no reason to tease it if you're not going there, I guess. But there's also so much. I mean, he's been so tight-lipped that I figured he would reveal the minimum necessary.
That's what I thought. And that's what makes this noteworthy.
Yeah, okay.
He revealed more than what was necessary.
Yeah. Well, that's what grabbed me by surprise, too. So, yeah, everybody's
here's an
scratching your head.
Explanation. If you're not as
it was an accident.
Conspiratorial as I am, perhaps, that this was the brief of what he could investigate on Manafort, and he felt that for completeness' sake, he had to give the full mandate he has specifically with regard to Paul Manafort.
Yeah, I guess that's possible.
It's
or
not
maybe
very convincing to me either.
I only thought, maybe he thought that simply, say, taking that one block quoting the thing, or just saying here's the relevant part of the memo would open them up for an argument of, I don't know what the context of the rest of the memo is. You take this one paragraph out of context. I don't know what it means. It seems to say that you're authorized to investigate this, but why and in what capacity? And so they just said, well, here's the whole memo.
All right. Now, there's another thing that's important to understand, too, which is there was, of course, the letter that we've all saw for a year where the appointment memo that is very sparse with regard to description. You remember the letter. I am appointing you, and you should, we'd always say, and anything that might arise, and any attempts to obstruct your investigation, what everyone would parse and review. Does that mean he gets to do this? And does that mean he gets to do that? Right. And of course, that was fair for us to do when we didn't know that there was a more comprehensive memo that described the reach. By the way, it also shoots to hell Alan Dershowitz's complaint that, you have to give specific mandate to the special counsel because blah, 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 which you don't apparently have to do to any U.S. attorney, by the way. No. So it really makes no sense what Dersh has said, but now it even makes less sense what he says because, by the way, here's what you were asking for, Alan. It just was in secret. And the reason why it was kept secret, by the way, makes perfect sense. You don't want to tip people off.
Yeah. I mean, it will tell. I imagine the full memo and probably a few other documents would essentially just say, all right, here are the eventual targets. And
yes,
we won't tell you you're a target until we're ready to make you a target. These are all potential targets, and probably one of them is the President of the United States. And it's probably unwise to simply say so until you're ready to make some sort of move, and probably destabilizing, too. I mean, just
right.
From a national security perspective.
I have some more thoughts on this if you want to hear them.
Absolutely. It's just we have to hear this music for a little while.
Okay.
And then we will be right back. Our first 2-minute break, which this, special counsel says we're absolutely entitled to take. So we'll be back after these two. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. A little bit of chatting behind the scenes. Very professional of you, Armando, by the way, in our discussions during the break as we got around to the point of, why would Manafort's lawyers have gone this route, and how could they be so in the dark about what the purview of the special counsel is? And you wisely decided, well, if I wait 15 seconds, I'll only have to explain it once. And now we're back on the air. Now's our opportunity to do that.
Okay, let me tell you why I think. First of all, Manafort's dead to rights, right?
Yeah.
This was a Hail Mary that probably had little chance. But when you have nothing but a Hail Mary in your arsenal, the guy's he's as good as convicted based on the indictment. This isn't some, this guy says, or it doesn't even depend. As I said in the first segment, they don't even need Rick Gates for this.
Right.
They've got him. So what have you got left? And you're his attorney. What do you got? Maybe a Hail Mary. Maybe some judge will throw Mueller out, and then maybe that'll be declared a big victory. And then maybe Trump will pardon me and say enough of this nonsense, or God knows what. When you've got very few weapons, you use what you have. Is my defense of them.
Okay.
Other than plea. Right? Because what's the alternative for Manafort here?
Not much. Just
the alternative is
sit there,
give him a bigger fish. Who's the bigger fish?
Well, I guess you could. It never really even occurred to me that Manafort would do that. But yeah, that is an alternative. I'm sure they presented it to him, and he just said no way.
Well, I personally think that's the whole purpose at this point, other than him just saying I'm guilty. and throw yourself on the mercy of the court, well, I guess you go to trial, but you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Unless something strange has happened, but I don't think so.
Draw a pardon.
So, okay. Then this circles back to why does Mueller include the Russia interference piece?
Okay.
In my view, it's to signal to a number of people who know what they did with Manafort with regard to Russia. Maybe it's Roger Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's somebody else. That I'm going after this.
Yeah. Oh, it occurred to me, I guess another interpretation of the same set of issues, the same conclusion, essentially, that I'm going after this. It could be that it has struck Mueller, as he must surely have mulled this at some point, to say, I'm going to put this other paragraph out about Russia, interference, collusion, etc., not only to establish, yes, that's a real avenue of inquiry. No, when the president says no collusion, no fake news, it's not fake. We are investigating it. But in addition, now that this is out and we say so, pardons, firing of Mueller, manipulation of the Justice Department of any other sort draws every red flag in the book. Now, firing Mueller, now pardoning people means direct interference in an investigation into Russian collusion and interference in the 2016 elections, and you're on the hook for that.
Yeah, I do think this is... Mueller has only spoken through his court filings, right?
Yeah.
He's not had obviously a press conference, but more than that, he hasn't had leaks.
Right.
Mueller's only messages are either in the room with the people he's talking to, the lawyers that they talk to, or you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I guess in the questions they ask, though, frankly, who knows if he's misdirecting when he asks them questions. But, some questions clearly are going to go to relevant things that he's looking at. But then you've got, when he files things, the Russia indictment of the 13 Russians. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What was the purpose of that? He's not going to get those 13 guys.
Right.
What was he doing? He was laying out what happened with regard to that piece. Of course, he hasn't gotten to the hacking yet. The hacking of the DNC, the hacking of John Podesta, Guccifer,
yes.
etc., right? Which is as
it's
important
still
a
out
piece
there.
as anything else in this Russia investigation, it seems to me. And the one that there already are smoking guns. To remind you, George Papadopoulos, for some reason, who reemerged in the news, by the way, implicating
Yes.
Jeff Sessions, apparently, talking to some random person.
Another guy at a bar that he spills
Another guy
it
at a
to.
bar.
He loves that. I'm
It's
sending him a
bizarre.
bottle. Yeah.
But George Papadopoulos is the piece that is,
Send him a
in
bottle
my
of vodka
view,
and
the
a
most
dictation
significant
machine.
one yet, right?
Yeah. Wow. Okay, keep blabbing.
Coffee boy or whatever. Who is the coffee boy?
Oh, everybody's
Or
a
is
coffee boy.
Papadopoulos
He's one
a
of
coffee
them. Yeah, he's one of them. And then everybody else. Carter Page was a coffee boy at one point. He's a coffee boy. Mike Pence, coffee boy, whatever. Anybody he needs
Here's the thing
distance
with
from.
coffee boys. They're in the room when people are talking about stuff.
That's true. Spider knew everything.
That's right. Spider knew everything. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. I think we're all on the same page there.
Right? And the fact is, Papadopoulos has already told you. Mifsud, the Russian-connected professor in London,
Yes.
told him in April of 2016 the Russians had all the emails.
Right. Yeah. That's
George Papadopoulos told people about this at a meeting that Donald Trump attended.
yes, that
Sessions
too.
attended. Sam Clovis kept talking with him about it and telling him, yeah, go find out more. And apparently based on this random guy in a bar conversation, Jeff Sessions told Papadopoulos to go find out more.
Yes. Which is astounding. I mean, As I said, it is the second time that he's blabbed to a guy at the bar and blown a hole in whatever cover, whatever operation he was in. The first one, you can almost forgive him because, well, he was just a guy blabbing. Now he's, of course, a guy who's been caught and been investigated and is in legal jeopardy and could potentially bring down the presidency. And again, drinking and blabbing to some rando in a bar. He got caught the first time. The whole story of why are we investigating? Why was the FBI on this investigation at all, ever? The answer is the guy he blabbed to in London when he was out drinking was an Australian diplomat. And he said, wow, this could undermine the American elections. I better tell the American FBI. And he did. And they said, what? Holy cow. All right, we better start listening in on what's going on. So they did, and they caught everybody saying, let's collude with Russia. So now, okay. Now, that got you in trouble once. But once bitten, try again, I think is the way the expression is. If George W. Bush was explaining it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I'm sure the Mueller people called him in and said, stop talking to people in bars.
Yeah, but he's not on board.
You're going to talk in court, so stop talking.
Oh, with Mueller, I guess he would be. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the second talk is like Mueller must be incensed at him.
God.
So stop doing that. I'm sure they called his lawyer and tell him to stop talking.
No more ankle bracelets for anybody. Maybe that's good news. Everybody gets locked up instead.
Right. But at any rate, you put all these pieces together, and Gates being basically a cooperating witness on Russia interference in the 2016 election.
Mm-hmm.
And Papadopoulos. And this bullet point being released by Mueller. Something's coming.
Well, it's about time.
Well, these things take time.
Yes,
investigation,
I say that
criminal
because I want them gone already, but yeah.
Can take time. Especially one where you're chasing phantoms at the beginning until you get people who know things.
Right.
And Rick Gates was the assistant to Paul Manafort. Right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So he's the guy who may put it all together for Mueller.
Yeah.
And he may be showing the card there, Mueller, to Manafort.
Yeah.
And to the world, in a sense, because Manafort's hanging out for a pardon or commutation or something, clearly, because his lawyers have to know he's going to jail for the rest of his life if he doesn't cooperate. Now, he's an old man already, even though he dyes his hair, it doesn't look old, but he's already in his 70s. And so what are we talking about? 10 years is probably his life expectancy, or 15 years, whatever. So maybe they can get him off for 3 or 4 or something so he doesn't die in prison. But there's only one way to do it, and that's to flip.
Yeah.
That's to flip. Now, the substance of what happened, of course, is Manafort's long shot motion is now a no shot motion.
Yeah, I would think so.
And being a no shot motion, there's the reality has to seep in now. He's going to try. He's going to be convicted. The sentences would be 25 years at least, because there's like 20 counts of things that carry 5 to 10 year penalties, and
20 years just on the rugs.
They're not concurrent. So he's got a choice to make. He's got a life choice to make, and Donald Trump may have a life choice to make.
Awesome.
Donald Trump will make the following choice, in my opinion. Yes. He will fire Rosenstein. He will fire Sessions. He will fire Mueller. They'll find some lackey to step in. I don't know who that will be, but it'll be somebody. And they will close down the investigation. That's what's going to happen. Now, I don't know what that does for Manafort, to be honest with you, because Manafort's problems. I mean, I guess he'd have to pardon Manafort as well, and I guess pardon everybody that pled. I don't know. It's how it all plays out, but that's what some roll up of this investigation is going to happen.
Yeah,
and then we find out what happens in this country, because I don't think even Alan Dershowitz is going to be able to defend this.
Well, he gets to dine out for as long as he tries. So I suppose he's not on the hook for anything. He's not anybody's lawyer. So, just go on television and speculate that stuff that is not true is true.
Stuff that isn't true is not
Mar-a-Lago,
true.
Right.
Well,
so
yeah,
he's under no
Alan
obligation to
Dershowitz
tell
lives
the truth.
to be on TV. I mean, that's his whole purpose. It's been his purpose for 30 years. People seem surprised that he takes these wacky theories, but he's been taking wacky positions his whole life. I'm not a Alan Dershowitz fan. I never thought he argued in good faith on anything, to be perfectly honest. But that's my own impression of these things, and everybody has their own views. But the point I was trying to make is it's going to be hard pressed for. Look, Turley's already good. Turley, the other fool, already has a problem, because his fundamental problem is he can't adopt Alan Dershowitz's theory that the president using his constitutional powers can't be an indictable or impeachable offense. And we know this because when Bill Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, Jonathan Turley argued before Congress that could be an indictable offense. Using the unconditional pardon power could be an indictable offense. And he was right; it could be if it was used for an improper purpose. So that he's not wrong. He just can't flip on that now, which I guarantee you absolutely would if he could.
And he can. I mean, you can do it.
I think even Turley has a problem. I mean, he wrote this long speech that he gave Congress in 2001.
So he just starts out by saying, oops.
I was wrong in 2001.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I guess
he could.
And you can do anything, but he doesn't have the. I don't know. I mean, it's not worth as much to him as it would be to someone like, I don't know, Dershowitz although he would do it just because it's fun. I mean, I do get the sense that Dershowitz just delights in being contrarian, and of course he wants to be on television. Yes, sure. And that's one of the best ways to get there, is to, tell producers that you will, with a straight face, argue the most counterintuitive position possible and make a lot of citations so that it sounds like it, might hold together.
Yeah, and he's bled over into CNN. They have that little dog and pony show that he does with Tubin, which is kind of galling. I don't really enjoy that, to be honest with you. But I understand why CNN does. It's probably they consider it good TV. But I do think that's where we're headed, and I don't know who's going to say, because at least outside of the Louis Gohmerts of the world, and what's that, 50 Republicans in the House, maybe 5 to 10 in the Senate, say fire Mueller now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Ron Johnson said one of the dumber things, which is you would expect from Ron Johnson, who's about as dumb as it gets, and all these things, said that the Mueller naming was premature.
Oh.
The Mueller naming happened because Comey was fired.
Oh. Well,
they really didn't have an option. The Attorney General had to recuse himself.
Yeah. And that was going to happen right then and there, no matter what, I guess.
And the FBI investigation itself had been going on since mid-2016 for the reasons you stated. George Papadopoulos mouthed off to the Australian ambassador in England. So there really was no choice, but Ron Johnson's a fool, as we know. And by the way, this is the part that I always get about when people talk about these things. whatever you thought of Hillary Clinton, here's the other thing you have to consider. In Wisconsin, the voters chose Ron Johnson over Russ Feingold in the last election.
Yes.
At some point, you got to say these voters are terrible. And something's going on in Wisconsin. Scott Walker's their governor. Wisconsin isn't what you folks think it is. Okay? Mm-hmm. I mean, hopefully Tammy Baldwin holds on. I'm all for all those things. But, at some point, and I had a Greg is wrong, but he was right, but he was for the wrong reasons this morning. He retweeted Jennifer Rubin saying enough about this economic anxiety. It's about racism, talking about the immigration situation. I said to Greg, oh, so if Jennifer Rubin says it, you accept it, but I've been telling you that for a year, and you've been fighting me the whole way?
What?
Yeah, I didn't like that. It's like, what is this, credentialism? If I said it in the Washington Post, you would have agreed with me? Anyway, but Greg, of course, ably defended himself. No, you missed the point. And maybe I did. But the reality is there's something with these voters that it is not what people think it is. And these people are the same people who are going to support Trump when he fires Mueller and Rosenstein and shuts down the investigation and pardons everybody. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how many Republicans will go along? Elected Republicans. 50% of the Republican Party or 70% will go along because that's what they do.
Right.
I think independents will largely flee. True independents, I mean. And, of course, Democrats will be. And then we'll see what happens in this constitutional crisis. Because I think that's where we're headed.
Well, it certainly seems like it. I mean, the only escape from it, I think, now has been partially blocked off. The more I think about it, the more I think that the additional information in the response to the Manafort motion is about partially blocking the exits on firing Mueller and issuing pardons. I mean, it can all be done anyway. The only thing you can do is throw up roadblocks and traps and tripwires that'll send up flares when you cross the line. And although it's certainly been established that firing Mueller would be, at a minimum, to say the very least, about it, problematic, but certainly probably also trigger a constitutional crisis. And I guess this only helps highlight that. I am now clearly as a matter of record, I'm now being fired because I was investigating Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, and really the next stop on this ladder is Trump or immediate inner circle. And he got nervous about that, so he did this.
It's a witch hunt. It's a hoax.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, let's see. So some of the listeners suggesting, Michael Musson saying, by the way, his guess was that it probably meant that Jared Kushner might have been explicitly named in the memo. Maybe that's one of the names redacted. I don't know that anything establishes that, but I mean, that's a probable fact anyway. I don't know if his inclusion of the collusion paragraph tells us anything more about Kushner's involvement, just that we all believe that it was coming anyway.
The reporting is that there has been investigation of Kushner's attempts to raise money in the transition and during the administration.
Yeah, and maybe that's a redacted paragraph. That's possible, because that wouldn't necessarily be related to... We haven't established that it's related to collusion with Russia per se, and if I were investigating that at this stage, I'd redact that. Sure. Of course.
No, I mean, yeah, I agree.
Even if I wasn't investigating it, I'd redact that.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I would go further that the guy that they have right now with, the leverage of all the, what seems to be two bulletproof indictments is Manafort.
Yeah.
And the other thing they have in hand is Rick Gates. Now, just on the Russia investigation itself, of course, you have Donald Trump Jr. and Kushner was in that meeting, though supposedly he was just looking at his phone the whole time. So they say.
Meeting. It's probably why he didn't get money from Qatar. He's sitting there in their with their sovereign wealth fund, and they were like, "This guy hasn't looked up from his phone for more than 2 seconds. I'm not giving him money."
That's right. He needed to do the sword dance or something, right? I think Kushner's problems may be legal. There's certainly financial. Yet again, more stories. Charles Kushner's out there, and Josh Kushner's out there, and they've got look. The 666 building is that $1.2 billion balloon payment isn't going away. We're 10 months away, apparently, and they go and raise the money. Who are they going to raise it from? The sovereign fund of? That's an emolument.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. And we can talk about emoluments, too, because there were developments in those cases. But before we go there was an interesting little story out of the New York Daily News.
Okay.
There's this bit. First, to set the stage, there was this investigation by the Republicans of the FBI and McCabe and how they let Hillary off the hook, and Lindsey Graham's all on board on that, right? On Benghazi and the Clinton Foundation or whatever nonsense they're up to now. Well, here was an interesting story with that backdrop, because, I've always thought the New York FBI office was basically explicitly and vocally and leakingly pro-Trump and anti-Hillary throughout the election. Leaking to the New York Times, of course, leaking to Fox, et cetera. And, no one's ever talked about that. Well, the story in the New York Daily News today is interesting in that the Weiner investigation, which led to the second Mueller letter, which decided to, which cost us the election, I think, pretty conclusively, was a joint investigation between the FBI, the New York FBI, and the New York Police Department Sex Crimes Bureau.
That's not the sex crimes of the New York Police Department. That's a separate bureau.
Well,
that's internal affairs.
Not in this case.
Yes, okay.
There are New York Police Department sex crimes, and you remember that story about the girl who was forced to sex with plainclothesmen, and they said that they get to have sex with whoever they want while on duty. There's nothing stopping that.
Now there is.
Which was a hell of an argument.
He got around to it. Yes.
And anyway, this fellow, the head of the New York Police
no controlling legal authority.
There was no. There literally was the argument. There was no controlling legal authority. And the fellow is named Osgood.
Mm-hmm.
Right around the time he started giving money to the Trump campaign in August of 2016, accelerated giving money to Trump when the Access Hollywood tape came in.
I'm for this.
Yes, the guy. Interestingly enough, the head of the sex crimes unit was inspired to give to Donald Trump by the Access Hollywood tape.
Okay, he's a big Billy Bush fan.
Here's the thing. This fellow, they talked about McCabe's wife and McAuliffe and all this. The guy who was in charge for New York Police Department, intimately involved, publicly thanked by the Justice Department for doing a great job on the Weiner investigation, was full-throated Trump supporter.
Yeah. Okay, so it appears. I see. I've got the piece now. Deputy Chief Michael Osgood.
That's him.
Okay. 10
so
contributions.
If we're buying this theory that, the political opinions of law enforcement impact their investigations, and I think in the case of the New York FBI, it absolutely did. And McCabe, frankly, was part of the problem there, too, which is interesting. He raised $500,000 for his legal defense fund, and I'm not saying that was wrong, but he was bad. He was bad in his job, just like Comey was bad in his job. McCabe and Comey are terrible, but they shouldn't be fired the way they were for the reasons they were fired. But if we're going to buy into this, McCabe's wife got money from McAuliffe, and therefore blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I'm not, and neither are you.
This guy, who was in the middle of the Wiener investigation, who was probably leaking his butt off, was maxed out to Donald Trump right around the Access Hollywood tape, while the actual investigation into Wiener was reaching fruition.
Right. It does, as they put it here in the article, nothing illegal about cops making campaign contributions.
They have a First Amendment right, of course.
But Osgood's donations don't look good given his rank and command, according to a former high-ranking NYPD chief. It's certainly fair to inquire as to why someone who's supposed to be objective and is looking into improper acts of a Democrat overtly gives money to a Republican candidate with allegations of his own against him. But I would say more to the point, it's fair to inquire why someone who's supposed to be looking into the improper acts of a Democrat not only overtly gives money to the Republican, but overtly gives money to a Republican who's making, at the time, a central tenet of his platform, the prosecution of the case that cop is looking into.
Exactly.
That's really problematic.
It certainly has appearance issues. Andrew McCabe, on the other hand, actually did not give anybody any money. Is a Republican, voted in the Republican primary. Mm-hmm. His wife is a Democrat. She was a Democratic candidate.
Yeah.
Maybe in an abundance of caution, McCabe should have stayed out of the case, but he didn't.
Yeah.
But if what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Right, and of course at the time, I'm sure if he was considering things, his wife's prospects versus what's going on with Donald Trump, well, Donald Trump, he'll never be elected. What's the difference? We got to take yet one more break. We'll be back in 1 minute, a little shorter this time.
A controversy. I mean, he's for Trump. He's for Trump whether he gives the money or not.
That is true. We are back, by the way, here on Netroots Radio with more Kagro in the Morning show. We're just continuing our discussion in the back channels. We haven't missed anything here. We're just largely restating our points here. Yeah, which is, of course, even if for whatever reason you bought into the notion that either that McCabe was tainted because his wife was running as a Democrat and got money from Terry McAuliffe. That whole accusation was all pretty tenuous, even if you believe in connecting the dots, and it's not nuts to connect the dots between a guy and his wife, even if one's a Republican and one's a Democrat. Although I don't know, we seem to have, for some reason, we were told to accept the firewall between James Carville and his wife Mary Matlin, but no real reason why anybody should have believed that, except that they'd go on television and say the opposite things all the time. We don't have the benefit of that with McCabe and his wife. But if for whatever reason you made that connection, even if you excused it as, well, they're two separate people, though they be married to one another, no such separation here for Osgood. And I mean, it's just that much dumber that he's although it would make a lot more sense if he were getting, if the money were flowing the other way, you keep investigating Wiener, but and here's some cash to do it. But he was just a partisan fan and was enjoying his work. He liked to get up every morning and charge into the office, and he loved what he was doing, and apparently they paid him enough for him to give away several $1,000s to Donald Trump, which is an awfully dumb thing to do under any circumstances, but.
That it is.
If you believed that he was a fabulously wealthy businessman, it was that much dumber. But okay, we don't prosecute for that. But you do have problems if you are investigating this case, and by the way, it didn't even end up leading him anywhere. So
okay, it was ridiculous.
Money well spent.
Right, no question. And the continuing annals of Donald Trump is an idiot.
Yeah.
His latest tweet.
I
quote, "I am right about Amazon costing the United States Post Office massive amounts of money for being their, quote, capital delivery boy."
Whatever that means. Okay. Yeah, he's wrong.
The United States Post Office's business is being a delivery company.
Yes. So that's terrible.
What does he say? Is he going to start calling the dishonest, the fake United States Post Office delivery boy? I mean, this is insane.
Yeah, they don't pay much attention to, reality or what people do for a living or when they declare, just as we were hearing Republicans, well, I don't know, what's her name? The young Republican woman who nobody can remember her real name was complaining about the March for Our Lives. You got to march for something, and it's in the name, for our lives. These guys, they just deliver stuff for Amazon. Yeah, that's the slogan. We're your postal service. We
neither
deliver
rain nor
for
snow
you.
nor sleet nor gloom of night.
Yeah, that too. The old style one. Yeah, the one I use on TV now. We deliver for you. I know, because that's your job.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yes, we deliver for you. Anyway, here's second sentence of Donald Trump's stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon should pay these costs.
They do.
They do, number one.
Right.
And then he puts in parentheses, plus what? And not have them borne, Bourne, by the way, born. Jason Bourne shouldn't be doing this.
I saw it in the movie. I know how to spell Bourne.
By the American taxpayers, all capital letters.
And that also not true.
Many billions of dollars. Billions.
Sure.
Trillions. He invented the word trillion.
Vingentillions. That's a new one.
PO leaders don't have a clue. Or do they? Or do they?
All right, sure. Or do they? Oh, no.
Oh, my God. We have a blithering idiot for president.
Yes, he's very dumb.
And that's not even his worst feature.
That's true. He's a rapist and a child trafficker.
That's the worst thing about him, but then there's 8 million other things that are just a disgrace. I don't know how we ever come back from this.
I don't know. We'll be spending years not only sorting all this stuff out, but he'll be out of office in any fashion. Doesn't matter. I'll need a year to get through the stories we didn't tell about the guy.
Exactly. Imagine there will be years of coverage of Trump scandals years after he's gone.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, Teapot Dome will be nothing to this man. Watergate will be nothing.
Yeah. So, man, of the various things that happened over the weekend, I don't even. I might not even catch up on all that. You all know what happened. That's it. We got to get to the new stuff.
I'm sorry to interrupt with the things that happened this weekend, but
that's okay. Go on.
Things happened today, and one of the things that happened.
That's the problem.
Well, it didn't happen over the weekend, but I paid attention to it over the weekend. So to me, it happened on the weekend.
Fine.
It's the emoluments scandal.
Yes, that's really substantive.
Now, the emolument scandal, as you know, has been scandalous, and I'd like to see an investigation of the GSA officer who approved the continuation of the lease on that hotel.
Sure.
To this day, I don't get it, that nobody cares, but, they don't. Well, there's too many other. I can't say they don't care. There's 8 million other things going on that they care about. But this is it really has led to something. The New York case got dismissed for strange reasons. I think that's going to be reversed by the Second Circuit when they ever get around to it, and that case will be remanded back to the Southern District of New York. But there's cases in the District Court in Maryland and Baltimore and one in D.C. Federal Court. And those cases survive motions to dismiss. They go to discovery now. So there is discovery that will be taken against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and various entities. You folks need to understand something about discovery, particularly in a civil case. It is far-reaching in normal circumstances. For example, I saw stories. Will they be able to get Trump's tax returns? In the normal course of a civil litigation, if the information that's contained in the tax returns is relevant, you get to seek discovery of it. You seek it in document production. You get to ask them questions about them in depositions. All right? So that's the norm. Of course, they're under seal, They're not going to be public documents in the normal course. They're subject to highly confidential designations. But someone will see them in the normal course.
Yes, well, that would be terrific. If there were normalcy, we would be able to count on that. And you never know in a situation like this one, when you're talking about a litigant that's a president.
Right. And no, I still don't think, I think it's impossible not to, because particularly the case is about emoluments. What is emoluments? Emoluments is considerations and payments. And the tax returns aren't everything, but they're clearly part of it. What income is he reporting? Where is he reporting it from? He's got 82 different LLCs. We saw this in the D.C. hotel write-up from the GSA, right? He had various pass-through LLCs.
Yes.
And the big give and why the GSA approved keeping the lease and not canceling it was, well, he's not going to get the money until after he leaves the presidency. Which is nonsense.
Well, they had a lot of nonsense going on. Yeah,
But that particular nonsense was the one that said, yeah, he's going to make money. Yeah, it's an emolument. But he doesn't cash it in until after the presidency ends by his revocable operating agreement of his LLC. Meaning he could change it tomorrow. I think there's the point you made a number of times.
Yeah, that, and of course he's allowed to draw income from it. I don't think there's anything that restricts him from drawing income now, anytime on it. It's just that I don't know whether they think he's not doing it or they think he'll refrain from doing it. And I don't even know why that matters, considering that 2 or 3 of the LLCs that have ownership in the hotel belong to Ivanka, and for some reason they decided, the president isn't really a federal employee per se, and so therefore, he's not excluded from ownership by the terms of the lease. But I mean, I don't know what they think Ivanka is, and she owns at least one of the pass-through LLCs that are part owners in the hotel. So does other 2 sons. But I mean, Ivanka keeps telling everybody she's a White House employee. And
she is, even though she doesn't draw a salary. Now, she could resign the position and just be, his daughter again, which is really her only qualification.
Doesn't really erase the last year and a half, but okay.
But no, I
wouldn't
nothing
mind her
erases like the last year and a half.
Yeah.
But let's go back to your first point. The president of the United States is not a federal employee.
That's don't make it my point. I'm just telling you what they said. But I don't know why that is supposed to work. Like, what else would we call him? There's a federally mandated, there's a constitutionally mandated salary and everything.
No, not only is there a constitutionally mandated salary and everything, the emoluments clause is built so that's the only compensation he can receive.
He can't be an employee of anyone else.
Federal and state governments, and of course there's a foreign emolument clause, which also applies to the president. Yeah. This is insanity. This is, again, the moment that I was like, who could have written this and said, okay, that makes sense? That's corruption. There's no way that was what any sane person thought was the analysis. Anyway, the cases go forward.
Yes, that was.
And there's going to be discovery.
Written up.
And discovery against Ivanka, I would assume. And the Trump Organization and Don Jr. and Eric and the winery and anybody and everybody.
I guess so.
By the way, that opens up, in my view, the opportunity to file a lawsuit in Florida. Mar-a-Lago.
Mar-a-Lago, yeah, okay.
Because the president has members of Mar-a-Lago who are connected to foreign governments.
Yes. Probably the vast majority of the members at this point.
I think more than people would realize.
Plus just some basic socialites who are dopes.
Okay, so all you need is some club, some hotel to say that they're being they have standing because they're losing business from these foreign dignitaries, because the president can sell favors.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if if it's as clear in the Mar-a-Lago case as it is at the D.C.
No, the
hotel,
lease is the clearest case in the history of clear cases. There's a clause in the contract.
Yes. That's just crazy.
There was a clause in the contract that called for the cancellation of the lease if an elected official became an owner, or if an owner became an elected official. He became the highest elected official. The lease should have been canceled. Period. In the story, even. There should have been no discussion.
Yeah, I'm baffled by that one. Except all I can do by way of explaining it is to say the people to whom we've granted the authority to make the decision on whether or not that clause applied simply came back and said, well, it doesn't. And that was unfounded in any argument that they made or any argument that could be made. They just said it. And so, yeah, I think it would be an investigation would be warranted. Is there any outside reason that explains it beyond I just felt like saying it didn't apply? And
there's none. There's none.
Well, no legal one that I can think of. So, yeah, I would like to know, like, for instance, did that person buy a new car in cash at any point, or a new home, or a dacha in, outside Moscow? What?
It's inexplicable. And the thing about it is, everybody would have been better he could have just divested himself from it and let his kids be the owners. And if Ivanka hadn't joined the government.
Right.
And remember the separation, Eric and Donnie Jr. were going to, just run the business and stay out of politics, which of course, that's worked out well.
Well, that was never going to happen, but
I know, but
gone through the motions, and he refused to for some specific reason. And I mean, it would have been perfectly clear, by the way, to anybody who wanted to bribe him, that paying his sons was fine.
Yeah.
But instead he was, what's interesting, I think about the story about his lawyers, back in private life, that no one would ever handle anything for him without a second lawyer in the room as a witness, because Trump would habitually lie to his own attorneys. And I guess Trump would probably tell you, if you caught him in a contradiction, well, I don't trust anybody, including my own attorneys. You can't trust anybody in this world. He doesn't trust his kids either to run the business, because they'll run away with all the money unless I hold on to the purse strings. I can't think of a good reason for the GSA officials to have approved that thing, given the terms of the lease. I can't think of a good reason for Donald Trump not to simply say, yeah, I'm turning over all control to my kids, quote unquote. And then just lean on your kids in private. You're nothing without me. Give me the money. And they would, probably, until he gets ill, at which point they'll abscond. But I don't know what he thinks he's needed to secure. He really literally didn't trust his children to administer this business. And I don't know why.
Would you?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. No, I mean, me and them, no, I don't trust them. If they were my kids, would I trust them? I don't know. I guess you're right. I mean, there's no real reason to trust them at all, given who they are, and that's, I guess, is wise. But I mean,
the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Versus, for instance, constantly spending my entire term in office under investigation for corruption. I would say, well, okay, let's not have this example of corruption so obviously in public view. I will simply tell people that want to bribe me, stay in the hotel. My kids get the money, but that's the same thing. And also, I'm 70-something years old. Basically, at this point, money I get is going to be my kids' money. I recognize that. I'm mortal. That's where it's going to go in a couple of years. But not for Donald. He needs to maintain control of it. And then when somebody said, well, you can't just maintain control of it, but we can fake up a trust for you. All right, good. Let's do that. But yeah, I don't know. It does say something that he didn't simply say, yeah, that business my kids get to keep, or any of them, all of them. At this point, I'm done making money. I guess given the premise of his run for presidency, I'm done making money. Now I want to make great deals for you. Okay. Sure. I mean, it was dumb and everything, but I mean, if that was...
It's a lie.
Yeah. Well, if it were true, then you wouldn't need to keep a piece of this or anything. You would have divested in a minute. You would have divested as a candidate. I'm so sure that I'm going to win and that I don't need this. I'm going to dedicate my life to public service now. I'm fake divesting. Just fake divest. Just do it. No. Won't do it. Got to maintain control. Okay, that's very weird, but all right.
I mean, he revels in not doing things that people are supposed to do. I mean, that is him in many respects. But look, it's just stupidity from him. At this point, my own view is once he's out of the presidency, the stain on the Trump name is so severe now as a brand. As we all know, everyone's taking the Trump name down as much as they can. He's going to get less money for his properties.
I would guess
it's going to be an embarrassment. It's for people to be associated with him.
Yeah,
I think. I
would guess
that's
so.
happened. Remember, he does. If he wants to start doing, stuff in Biloxi, Mississippi, okay, but he likes New York. He likes Los Angeles. He likes Washington, D.C.
Yes. Oh, now he has or had anyway some plans to do just that, to be in the Biloxi, Mississippi type spaces.
But not using the Trump name.
Yeah, that's the funny part is he takes the Trump name off of it. Like I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Yeah, for Trump supporters, like. I'm going to move into your neighborhood. I'm going to do business there, but I refuse to put my name on it, which is my trademark. I put my name on everything except the thing I'm putting in your trashy neighborhood, which
yeah, you're not good enough to have my name.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but
Well, I think it means exactly what you think it means. He thinks that they're.
I guess what I mean
they're
is
yokels and
I don't know why he
losers.
thinks that's a good idea, but he does, and I guess they're doing that now. I don't know. Let's see. There's definitely a couple other things that require some attention here. Let's see. I don't even know where to start with this nonsense.
I'm going to let you go.
Yeah,
to
let
that,
me do
if you
that.
don't mind. I've actually got to return some phone calls that came in while I was talking here, enjoying myself.
Put them through.
But,
well, I'll take them.
Yeah, we'll talk about some franchise agreements.
I'm going to sue you. Yeah, there you go. That's all I have to say. Oh, these are your clients. Well, okay. I'm going to sue them.
Clients, unfortunately.
Sue these other guys.
Or fortunately, I guess.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they're my clients. Unfortunately, they're calling me instead of just sending me checks.
We're glad that you have. Right.
I'm glad to have the clients. I'm annoyed that they're bothering me with their
Can we
problems.
just move to the payment portion of our discussion?
Exactly. I'm like Trump in that. Just pay me.
Look, if you could make a great deal like that, or negotiate different rates with the post office, it would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for
you, David.
Insight on all these things. All right, we'll head back into the pocket here and pull out the rest of everything that some small sliver of things that require our attention. And I guess we'll move in reverse chronological order, I guess, is the only thing that makes any damn sense at this point. Let's see. On the trivial side, I note the now viral retweeting of a compilation of comments made by those on, I imagine, the pro-gun right. The weekend was a continuation of the pro-gun rights, what should we say, irrational and irresponsible and frankly very sickening fight with the students of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Again, high school. this continues, and it's gotten to really insane levels, which is everything you would have expected because, of course, you're talking about insane individuals. A tweeter by the name of, Catherine Ty, I'm guessing, is whenever all the letters run together, you have to try and parse this out. And then you find out, yeah, no, my name is Cathar, and my last name is Inati. No, so it looks like Catherine Ty, who has changed her, I don't know what you call it. How do you differentiate between the address from which you're tweeting, the @ thing, which I think you can't, I don't know, maybe you can change it somehow, and the other name that you put in there, for instance, mine being @KagroX, and I put my real name plus the LLC in there. She's got, Catherine Ty does, AK-47 in there, which I imagine might be somewhat tongue-in-cheek. And she tweets out, I am deceased. That is not a factual statement. It is a funny way of saying she's dying of laughter from this compilation she's put together of comments and photos being tweeted around by the right-wing opponents of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas students. This looks like a Facebook post from someone posting as America's Last Line of Defense, which gives you some idea of what they're about. And it says she has to be stopped. A photo included herein is described by this person as Emma Gonzalez, the Douglas student, attacking a Second Amendment supporter's truck at a March for Our Lives rally. And it is not, I mean, it may be being offered as a joke by somebody who unfortunately launched into the right-wing stratosphere and nobody got it. It is, of course, as many who see it will recognize, a photo of Britney Spears during a mental breakdown, essentially, as how it's described, whenever this was, and had shaved her head, a forgotten period perhaps among, except among hardcore Britney Spears fans, I guess. And she does appear to be attacking a vehicle of some kind with an umbrella. It's a vicious attack, but it's quite recognizable as Britney Spears. But the fact that she's got a shaved head, I guess somebody thought they could pass it off as Emma Gonzalez, and it appears to work because there's comments to the post included in this compilation that Catherine has put together. Somebody saying, it's all of what you would expect. These are supposed to be peaceful school kids, and here she is destroying a truck of someone with an umbrella. Hope they sue her and parents for all the damage. It's not her. If she would have attached, he writes, but obviously we mean attacked me, she would be 6 feet down with a week. With a week? I don't even know what that's supposed to be. Like, within a week, I would kill her? I mean, if she's attacking you with an umbrella, do it right then and there. Self-defense. This is why people need gun for protection from crazies like the above. Not where, but where is the police protection? That's he's writing colloquially. Where is it? I'm looking all around for it. Where is it? No, he just used the wrong word. And then, let's see. What's wrong with these young people? What's wrong with these young people? When did wrong become right? Why do we as true Americans, allow these children of Satan to destroy and divide our country? Space ? You see, I know they are paid by Soros and others go do these things, but where are the parents? Space ? You get the idea. And of course, all of this freak out over a picture of someone who's obviously not Emma Gonzalez, and this didn't happen. And oh my God, fake news. It works. These people they buy into the whole thing. They spent the weekend ranting and raving about Emma Gonzalez attacking, and what's supposed to tell you that's, I guess if you think that's Emma Gonzalez, the only natural conclusion you can draw is that the person inside the vehicle is a Second Amendment supporter, as opposed to, I don't know, someone who tried to steal her umbrella or something like that. But perpetual outrage machine keeps these folks going, and it's really, I don't know, it's amazing. It's trivial, but it's there, and it's not trivial at the same time because it's a huge fake news problem. We'll talk more after this next break. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So much to catch up on, and no chance that we'll actually get to all of it. But let's take at least a quick look back at what we were discussing yesterday and even last Friday. Scott Pruitt, as far as I can tell from scanning the Twitter machines, not yet fired. Some difference of opinion among those of us here on the other side as to whether or not he eventually will be fired. So contradictory signals on that. And I guess before even getting into the latest reasons to I guess this does include the latest reason to fire him. We have this here. The White House, we're reminded basically of White House patterns of behavior. I have a tweet here from Matthew Neville, who is just one of us dudes out there to just chat on the internet, as opposed to somebody who's official and should have some kind of a blue check mark and is speaking for some media organization or other, just a regular guy who has it right. The White House leaks before the firing, and I think that's probably a good guess, pointing to the Hill's latest entry in the Pruitt saga, which I think we got most of the bad stuff out there through yesterday and through our pre-recorded show. But the Hill, I guess, has something new to add to this. Pruitt raised the pay of 2 aides in his department after the White House declined to approve the application for that pay raise. And I think Matthew kind of correctly calls out, this is the sort of information that, like, a direct affront to the White House that they would ordinarily use as the justification in finally firing him. I thought that they really had enough in the sense that the only question about firing him was the White House mad enough about the bad press to fire him? That has, in some cases, been enough. Or would his compliance as a corrupt crony be enough to save him? And there's where we have the difference of opinion. Some people saying you don't get fired for corruption in this administration. You only get fired for corruption that isn't either giving an adequate taste of the gleanings to Trump and his family and friends, or something that it just doesn't benefit Trump directly. Even if it's got bad headlines attached to it, it's okay so long as it's working for him. Although I guess the counterexample to this point would be Ben Carson. What is Trump getting out of Ben Carson's continued ineptitude and the $31,000 dining room table? There might not be anything from the table making its way into Trump's pocket, although I think what's going on there is Carson continues to be clueless and affable enough to allow the lower level appointees inside HUD that Trump has made continue to funnel federal housing subsidy money to Trump. I mean, my thinking on that is when Trump installed, what was it, like his kid's wedding planner as the HUD Region 2 director. Region 2 being the New York area is included in Region 2 of HUD. And the legacy holdings from his father, Trump's father, Fred, include a couple thousand Section 8 subsidized federal Section 8 subsidized housing units. And so whenever so long as Section 8 subsidization continues, that flows from U.S. Treasury to Housing and Urban Development Department to Region 2 to renters to landlord, which is Trump. So it's siphoning money out of, that was happening anyway before he was president. But now as president, he can do fun things like, I care about poor people. I'm going to increase their Section 8 housing assistance. And should that come through, you should be reminded that that means larger chunk of that money goes into his pocket, not I'm helping poor people more. Though they may, in fact, be ancillary beneficiaries of that. So I don't know whether that's going to help them relative to where they are now, but it will certainly pay him more money. So I guess the question is Pruitt doing enough to help Trump and his friends to survive these embarrassments? And this leak suggests that maybe not. And honestly, there's nothing special about Pruitt at EPA. He is, I think, probably one of a dozen or more hardcore opponents of everything the EPA does that could be installed in this position. I don't think there's anything special about this guy. But the Hill's latest is this. Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Scott Pruitt reportedly increased the pay of two close aides even after the White House declined to approve an application for those raises. They were Sarah Greenwalt and Milan, Millan, Milan with two L's, I don't know, Hupp with two P's, PP. That's it. Maybe that's it. Milan Hupp PP was reminding Trump of the PP tape, I guess. Anyway, they came to Washington with him from Oklahoma, according to The Atlantic. Pruitt requested that Greenwald's salary be raised from $107,435 to $164,200. Hupp's from $86,400 to $114,500, basically. The application was reportedly dismissed, and the White House did not approve the request. But Pruitt reappointed instead the two aides under a provision of the Safe Drinking Water Act, which lets the EPA administrator hire up to 30 people without having the White House or congressional approval. And so he's done that. Pruitt could have full control over the aides' pay by reappointing them in this way. Ironically, one of those sorts of provisions that allows the administrator to get around all that crazy red tape and whatnot that happens in Washington and work around the crazy bureaucracy and instead hire the best people and even fire the people that need to be out of there and control his personnel that way. And I don't know if that's really going to infuriate the president or not, but it opens the door for his firing, I guess. Anything new on the front of the $50 a night lease? I don't think that there's much more on that one. There was a new development. Let's see, did I put anything in pocket away on this one in particular? I don't know. I feel like we probably must have, but there's the volume of things that we ended up putting in pocket over the weekend were really outrageous. There was more reporting on the use of his tremendous security detail on a trip to Disney World. I think we may have mentioned that one, but maybe not. But yeah, he took the family to Disney World and took along the security detail and, of course, billed the government for their travel and lodging. And apparently the Rose Bowl as well. So really living high on the hog. You just can't stop grifting off the government, which, I assume he got the green light to do initially from Donald Trump until the point where, of course, anyone finds out about it. And then you're on your own. There was one other development that I mentioned and that was brought up here in the End of the Hill article. Pruitt, it says, has been at the center of several controversies surrounding his personal spending. This in addition to, they already had mentioned the $50 a night lease. It was reported earlier this year that he spent hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars on first-class travel while on agency business. It was also reported Monday that Pruitt's aides were considering leasing a private jet for him at $100,000 a month, because, of course, that's what the coal miners wanted. It is linked herein to Monday's report, also, of course, in the Hill, because it originated. The story we were reading was in the Hill, so they're going to only link to themselves, obviously, even if someone else did the reporting. Yeah, EPA considered leasing a private jet for Pruitt. Why? Who knows? Probably because he wanted to travel around in style. He's the one that had the difficulty. He got caught traveling in first class, and he said that there was a security reason for him to travel in first class, and that the security reason turned out to be one time he traveled in coach and somebody yelled at him that he was ruining the environment. And so therefore, national security got to be in first class, where no one can yell because there's no air in there. As you know, they keep first class in a total vacuum, and without the medium of the air, the sound waves don't travel. You know how it goes. I think that's established fact. But better yet, because, of course, many times when you board a plane, the common people are herded through first class on their way in and out of the plane. They get to see how it's not even the other half. It's it's not quite 1% of the plane that is dedicated to first class, but they get to shuffle through there. Of course, first class folks get to board first. So Scott Pruitt might sit down in his first class seat, and then all the yucky people walk through, and they can tell him things like, you're a terrible administrator of the EPA and you should stop stealing money from the federal government, and et cetera, et cetera. And you don't want to hear that. So instead, why not spend $100,000 a month leasing a private jet? Why a private jet? Because Mnuchin and some of the other jerks got in trouble for using military jets, so we'll use a different one. Oh, but didn't one guy get fired for also using private jets? Yes, he did. But he didn't lease them. He simply chartered them. And so this will be totally different. Plus, we can lease it under a different name. President Trump's EPA director reportedly considered, the whole agency, considered leasing a private jet for Scott Pruitt's travels last year. A private jet company gave Pruitt aides a cost estimate of $100,000 a month. The Washington Post reported on Monday. Aides reportedly decided not to go through with the plan because of the high cost. Hello, duh. Pruitt has been under scrutiny for his travel habits, yada, yada. It was revealed that Pruitt spent more than $105,000 on first-class travel in his first year as administrator. So I guess good on these people for realizing that $100,000 a month is more than $105,000 a year, and thought they could get out of that bad publicity by not doing it. However, too late. Just knowing that you considered it is bad enough. All right, so that's where we are. Now we got to wonder whether or not he ends up getting fired, and we wrestle with the question over whether or not he's of enough benefit to Trump and his friends to keep him in place. And here is one article that suggests that maybe he is. The New York Times has this piece from Eric Lipton yesterday. Pruitt had a $50 a day condo, we know that, linked to lobbyists, we know that. Their client's project just got approved. Now we're talking. The EPA signed off last March on a Canadian energy company's pipeline expansion plan at the same time that the EPA chief, Scott Pruitt, was renting a condo linked to the energy company's powerful Washington lobbying firm. Both the EPA and the lobbying firm dispute that there was any connection whatsoever between the agency's action and the condo rental, for which Mr. Pruitt was paying $50 a night. Any attempt to draw that link is patently, or perhaps patently, some people like to say, false. Liz Bowman, a spokeswoman for Mr. Pruitt, said in a written statement, which probably means, I guess, that it's true. Nevertheless, government ethics experts said that the correlation between the EPA's action and Pruitt's lease arrangement, he was renting from the wife of the head of the lobbying firm, Williams & Jensen, illustrates why such ties to industry players can generate questions for public officials. Even if no specific favors were asked for or granted, it can still create an appearance of conflict. We know all about that, of course. Let's see which one we're talking about here. March 2017, the action by the EPA on the pipeline project in the form of a letter telling the State Department that the EPA had no serious environmental objections meant that the project, an expansion of the Alberta Clipper line, had cleared a significant hurdle. The expansion, a project of Enbridge Incorporated, a Calgary-based energy company, would allow hundreds of thousands more barrels of oil a day to flow through this pipeline to the United States from Canadian tar sands. So all the things that we didn't want with Keystone XL, this though already built and operating, and so very little you can do about it except, of course, increase capacity and therefore the potential capacity for any leaks. But okay. The sign off by the EPA came even though the agency at the end of the Obama administration had moved to fine Enbridge $61 million in connection with a 2010 pipeline episode that sent hundreds of thousands of gallons of crude oil into the Kalamazoo River in Michigan. Glug, 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 just where you want it. And other waterways, of course. The fine was the second largest in history of the Clean Water Act, behind the penalty imposed after the Deepwater Horizon spill in the Gulf of Mexico. In case you were wondering about the scale, at least of the importance in terms of the fine. A spokesman for Williams & Jensen said the lobbying firm did not intervene with the EPA or Mr. Pruitt on the Enbridge pipeline expansion either before or after Mr. Pruitt was living in the condo owned in part by Vicky Hart, the wife of J. Stephen Hart, chairman of the firm. We'll see about that eventually. I bet that story will change. The lobbying firm also said it had not worked on similar regulatory issues for Enbridge in the past year, even though it was registered at the time as lobbying for the company on issues affecting pipelines and construction of new pipelines. Its disclosure report from early 2017 says, let's see just a little bit more about this one. Cynthia Giles, who served at the EPA as an enforcement official in the agency's Mid-Atlantic region in the 1990s before becoming an assistant administrator at the agency in the Obama administration, said Mr. Pruitt's housing arrangements raised questions about the fairness of the EPA's decision-making process. More about how that is just basically bad judgment. And let's see, shall we move on down here? Some other possible flashpoints here. Williams & Jensen was lobbying the EPA early last year, according to its disclosure reports, on behalf of both Oklahoma Gas and Electric, a major coal-burning utility, and Concho Resources, a Texas-based oil and gas drilling company. The work for Oklahoma Gas, which is, of course, where Pruitt's from, Oklahoma, involved the effort to repeal or revise the landmark Obama-era rule that pushed states to move away from coal in favor of sources of electricity that produce fewer carbon emissions. An EPA calendar in March 2017 shows that Mr. Pruitt and his chief of staff were scheduled to meet with the company execs at the request of a Williams & Jensen lobbyist. Brian Alford, spokesman for Oklahoma Gas, said the company had received no favors from Mr. Pruitt. Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's the case. All right, so a couple other people in the mix there, things to keep an eye on. There's more to the article. Of course, I would encourage you to read it all thoroughly. And let's see. Anything else that comes up that we need to keep an eye on? Well, in terms of moving parts, I think that probably gives us all we need for the moment. We may end up revisiting this article later. Oklahoma Gas, though, and what was the other name of the other client? Concho Resources. Okay, so that we'll keep in mind. Yes, so, we'll see how long Pruitt continues to hang on there, though I do have some recollection that there was one other item of interest. Yes, right, yeah. That was the mention in the White House of how they felt about what was going on. I guess the question was finally put to them. Whose tweet am I looking at here? Jacqueline how does she say it? Alemany? Alemany, White House reporter for CBS News. So probably frequently on camera and name said aloud and everything, but I've missed all of that. New, she says, President Trump called Administrator Pruitt last night. He loves talking on the telephone, and said, keep your head up. Keep fighting. We have your back. That, according to an administration official. Chief of Staff Kelly called Pruitt this morning and reiterated the president's message. That, of course, means that he should be fired at any time, and I think he has probably up to about 11 days to get that done. That's the longest time it's taken on any of these stupid reversals that Trump has pulled. So start the clock. And everybody had the same thought, too. I mean, just taking a quick look at responses. Let's take a look. I mean, can I see this? I got to look at the original tweet. Many responses. But the first one out of the box here. So will he be fired by 5 p.m.? He will be fired by tonight by tweet. Let's see. And then, but everything is fine. And various meme GIFs. Let's see. Anything else? More. Basically, there's no other alternative answer out there. There can mean only one thing. Pruitt is about to be fired by tweet. Pruitt is toast. He will be gone by Friday. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that represents a Twitter consensus. Whether or not that's worth anything, we'll see. But I'd say you'd do well to bet on it. All right. Wow. About 10 minutes left. Let's see if we can get to this one. See if we can cram it all in. This, I think, would otherwise have been the hot item of the day. Donald Trump versus Jeff Bezos, or more appropriately, perhaps, or more directly, I guess, Amazon.com. He's fighting with them over the great deal that they managed to negotiate with the post office. And I know that will incense some people. There are probably Trump supporters out there in the country who feel like everybody should pay the same for postal rates. And why not? They're not that expensive. But of course, if you're shipping millions and millions of packages, it would only be prudent to try to negotiate a better rate for them. And that's what Amazon has done. Many companies have done that. I know that for a fact. My wife's company does a lot of shipping, and they are constantly negotiating with carriers, UPS, FedEx where necessary, and the Postal Service to get favorable rates for shipping parcels because they ship so much. So not uncommon. And it's a large part of what keeps Amazon prices down. And a lot of Trump country benefits from that because a lot of Trump country is getting hold of their consumer items through Amazon and enjoying that subsidy being passed on to them. It creates an awful lot of problems, and on balance may still be perhaps the worst thing possible for the country because, of course, it's the profiteering being what it is. The money floats to the top. We get cheap goods sent to us for cheap, I guess, but it's also part of some predatory pricing activity by Amazon that drives local retailers out of business with fair regularity. Anyway, so it's not the worst thing in the world necessarily that Trump would, it is the worst thing in the world that Trump would take them on. It's not the worst thing in the world that they'd been challenged. It's just bad that Trump is doing it for a number of reasons, not the least of which is he's going to get the facts wrong, and he'll be hypocritical about it because, of course, during the campaign, and I'm sure during his business time as a private businessman, such as he was, for all those years, I'm sure he was utilizing those preferential postal rates to order from Amazon all the time. In fact, that was the conclusion of one of the newspapers, would tell you as a matter of fact, according to FEC documentation, they spent plenty of money with Amazon. But Vanity Fair, Gabriel Sherman has the more interesting angle on this. The headline of his piece being, Trump is like, how can I F with him? Trump's war with Amazon and the Washington Post is personal. And that's the real issue here. It doesn't really care that much about Amazon. It's that it's owned by Jeff Bezos, and Bezos also owns the Washington Post, and the Post reports about Donald Trump. And so that means they're going to be critical of him because he only does evil. That's how you got to cover him. The West Wing, now finally calm, supposedly. Trump is now contemplating a multi-front campaign against Jeff Bezos. And what could be wrong with that? Of course, it's just one more in a series of impeachable crimes, essentially, that Donald Trump is perpetrating. Still top of the list, as I reiterated over the weekend, though, the long weekend. Puerto Rico should have had him impeached all by itself, minus all the rest of this stuff. But this story, of course, represents a president of the United States having a personal feud with someone, and it just so happens that someone owns the Washington Post, the capital's paper of record, and he's going to use the power of the presidency. He's seeking to use the power of the presidency to destroy the business of the owner of the Post, to punish him for whatever, bad coverage. And this at the same time, of course, that Trump conservatives have taken the position that it ought to be considered un-American and unconstitutional, illegal, punishable by death, perhaps, for students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, for instance, to call for boycotts of speech they don't like. But anyway, let's get to some of this and start you off and give you a flavor for what's being reported here and recommend that you read the rest on your own. We'll discuss it tomorrow, I am sure. For the first time in Donald Trump's presidency, the West Wing soap opera appears to be in hiatus, with many of its starring characters, I don't know why he says this, Gary Cohn, Hope Hicks, for instance, either permanently off stage or with much reduced roles. I have doubts about that. John Kelly, Jared Kushner, with the much reduced roles. That I believe. Currently, there's one star, a situation Trump is obviously enjoying, and his new freedom is used to focus ever more closely on his perceived enemies and obsessions. Good for America. Amazon, whose owner, Jeff Bezos, also owns the Washington Post, is currently the main target. Trump has ripped into Amazon in recent days. I don't think that effectively, but okay. Claiming in a series of tweets that Jeff Bezos' tech giant benefits from billions in subsidies from the U.S. Post Office while skirting sales taxes. Now, he's in no position to complain about people skirting taxes, but whatever. Unlike others, not unlike you, but unlike others, they pay little or no taxes to state and local governments. Use our postal system as their delivery boy, which it's supposed to be, causing tremendous loss to the U.S. and are putting many thousands of retailers out of business. And that part is true. Of course, this is the guy who evades state and local taxes by buying a goat and keeping it in a pen on his golf course in New Jersey and then claiming the entirety of the land parcel that it sits on as farmland. But okay. On Monday, he wrote, "Only fools or worse are saying that our money-losing post office makes money with Amazon. They lose a fortune, and this will be changed. Also, our fully tax-paying retailers are closing stores all over the country. Not a level playing field." The tweets caused Amazon stock to plunge 5% on Monday, and I imagine an enterprising lawyer would probably file suit about that. Now, according to 4 sources close to the White House, Trump is discussing ways to escalate his Twitter attacks on Amazon and further damage the company. He's off the hook on this. It's war, one source told me. He gets obsessed with something, and now he's obsessed with Bezos, said another source. Trump is like, how can I F with him? According to sources, Trump wants the post office to increase Amazon's shipping costs. I don't know that they're going to be able to convince them from a business perspective to do that, but there's also legal issues with that. Anyway, when Trump previously discussed the idea inside the White House, Gary Cohn had explained that Amazon is a benefit to the Postal Service, which has seen mail volume plummet in the age of email. Trump doesn't have Gary Cohn breathing down his neck, saying you can't do the post office the crap. A Republican close to the White House said he really wants the post office deal renegotiated. He thinks Amazon's getting a huge effing deal on shipping. And they are, but they're doing almost all of the shipping that's going on there. Anyway, that being the case, well, that really all aside, you can't sit in the presidency and overtly be caught trying to use the power of the federal government to fight personal battles this way. Of course, Trump doesn't believe that any such restriction does exist or should exist, even if it did. And he's likely to walk into what would ordinarily be another impeachment trap, but one he laid for himself entirely. No real explanation why he would walk into this one to begin with. All right, time to stay tuned now for Justice Putnam's program, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And boy, have they got a selection for you today, because we didn't get to jack squat.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
I sound like I'm angry about that. Of course I am, in fact, grateful to Armando for coming on and discussing all the news in depth. I mean, that's really the value we bring to the program, I would hope, rather than simply reading you the news. But for more value added, stay tuned for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. All the good stuff is in the news today.